just because in that fragment, in that snapshot, in that all we see is some humans with stone tools in caves, doesn't mean that nothing else was happening. So,
well, a piece of evidence to that would point in that direction is Egypt, because Egypt, even if you accept the conventional timeline of Egypt, which is 2,500 BC for the Great Pyramid, go look at the rest of the world at 2,500 BC. You don't see anything like that. Nothing even close.
Yeah, they were. Look at the conventional model of history. The ancient Egyptians were wildly ahead of
everyone.
It's just
weird,
and that's if you. And the conventional model doesn't really give us any explanations of how they were doing what they were doing.
And they arrogantly dismiss any other explanations, which is really weird. When you're talking about these immense structures that are baffling, absolutely baffling to anybody who's being honest.
Yeah.
What is your take on these Italian researchers that are looking at the tomography and they're looking at these things that they believe are underneath the Great Pyramid and some other structures in Egypt?
Yeah, the what's it called, like SARS Toppler. I mean, I don't know. I'm always a little bit suspicious when you make sensationalist claims with knowledge, and that doesn't mean it's wrong. You have
to be suspicious because it's bonkers.
It's crazy.
I mean, if what they're saying is 2 kilometers deep underneath the Great Pyramid, there's structures, and there's hundreds of meters of these pylons, these pillars that are in uniform positions with some sort of a coil wrapped around them. Like, what is that real? And they reproduce it in multiple different scans, but I don't know what they're seeing. I don't understand the technology, understand where the errors could be, like what could possibly cause it to glitch like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I would love it to be true, obviously. Can you imagine?
That's the problem. The problem is the same problem that I have with UFOs and everything else.
You want it to be true.
100%. So it really clouds my judgment. And then I have to get my, analytical mind to say, shut up.
Yeah.
Let's look at this honestly.
But I mean, I think, there's definitely something below the Giza Plateau. Like, that's always been written about in ancient sources, and these kind of scans, and then you have stories of people going down into labyrinths that aren't, accepted by Egyptology, and there's definitely massive mystery in Giza and the construction of the pyramids and what could potentially be below pyramids. And this kind of new pyramid scan project has the potential, I think, to, make big progress in understanding what is below Giza. But I don't know, until there's better data out there, I'm not going to, jump to any conclusions and declare that this is like evidence of, a lost advanced technology, civilization, or anything like that.
No, you can't. I am so excited about just the possibility that they're right. Because if they are right, that's the greatest monkey wrench into history that's ever existed. Because explain away that.
Yeah,
with ancient people with stone tools or copper. Like, explain that away.
They probably, mate, because it already doesn't make sense. Their explanation for the construction of the pyramids being wooden sledges and stones or whatever they say, it already doesn't make sense. It's already so ridiculous that I wouldn't even be surprised if they tried to explain away these.
Well, discredit them, because the problem is if it does indicate that the pyramid is something other than a tomb,
there's not. I don't even see any evidence that the Great Pyramid at Giza. I mean, what's the evidence that was a tomb? I mean, I don't think they've ever found in there.
No.
It's just a chamber which they've called the King's Chamber.
Right.
I mean, I'm not an expert in ancient Egypt by any respect, but it's always me that they're so determined that the pyramids are tombs just because some later pyramids have had, mummies and pharaoh sarcophagi found inside them. But
that doesn't mean anything, and that doesn't mean that they built it. That also could mean that the pharaoh decided that it was his and wanted to be buried inside of it, and it had existed for thousands of years before they ever even got there.
And you can find bodies in, buildings today, and that doesn't mean the purpose of that building was to be a tomb.
Right,
Exactly. Someone's buried there, so someone, as you say,
it's a weird assumption. It's a very weird assumption. And did you ever read any Christopher
Dunn,
Christopher Dunn's work.
I know a bit. I haven't read his book, but I know a bit about it. And it's interesting. I mean, he's like a serious guy, isn't he? He's like
an engineer.
Exactly. And he has quite serious theories that...
He thinks it's
crazy, wouldn't it?
Especially if you add into that the Graham Hancock's ideas and some of these other people's ideas that perhaps some of these structures are far older.
Well, kind of Orion correlation and the
the fact that the deeper you go into the sand, the more sophisticated the building techniques are.
Yeah.
That gets weird. Like larger stones, like what happened?
The whole of in Egypt and the Sahara Desert in general just doesn't make sense because When you look at the Sahara Desert and the fact that it was green for 9,000 years, and then it stopped being green at precisely the time that we're told ancient Egypt emerged, well, that doesn't make sense. That defies how civilization works. Why would a civilization only emerge after the climate got worse?
Right.
That doesn't make sense at all.
And so little research done in sub-Saharan Africa where they've actually gone into the ground and done large-scale research of these immense areas.
Nothing. The Sahara Desert is vast and obviously covered in sand and extremely hot, difficult to survey, politically unstable, and there's basically been no archaeological work done across the whole. And the Sahara Desert is massive. It's like the whole of North Africa, right down to.
Right.
I mean, it's massive, and
you get the United States in
you
there.
could fit anything like a whole. Preceding civilization for 9,000 years leading up to ancient Egypt. It's the perfect place. It's right by Mesopotamia. It's right by Egypt. Yeah, we have this blank spot for the 9,000 years before the development of civilization, which is kind of also the gap between, I mean, it's a little bit less than this, but the gap between Göbekli Tepe and the birth of civilization. We have this huge area which would have been perfect for civilization, full of rivers, lakes, grasslands, perfect climate, and it's just missing.
Also, abundant resources where they could establish a stable civilization because they had so much food and they weren't being attacked, so they could kind of set up shop and figure some things out.
Yeah.
Over a long...
Theory is that things were happening in the Sahara Desert when it was green in the Sahara for those 9,000 years. And then, because it was really quick, that's one thing people realize is that when the Sahara Desert turned, green, lush paradise, whatever you want to call it, to a desert, it was like a few centuries. It's called rapid desertification, and it flipped, not overnight, obviously, but in a few centuries compared to 9,000 years is a rapid change. And for any kind of culture that was living there, you wouldn't have noticed it straight away, but in 50 years, you'd be like, fuck, it's getting a bit hot here. Do you know what I mean? Shit's going on. And then so I think maybe people migrated to the last stretch of green that was still important to them, which was the Nile River. And then the kind of survivors or the migratory populations developed around the Nile River, and in the kind of experience and knowledge that they had from their lives and the kind of history of their cultures in the Green Sahara period, that is ancient Egypt. I mean, that's just a
Well, it's
theory,
also just an assumption that ancient Egypt didn't exist alongside that, or even previous to that, which is also possible, especially when you consider what Robert Schoch thinks about the erosion, the water erosion in the Temple of the Sphinx.
Yeah, the kind of explanation away of that also never made me that it's wind and sand, because when you see pictures of the Sphinx, even when they kind of found it in Napoleonic times, it's buried in sand.
Right.
And there's records from the Egyptians themselves who, excavated it effectively because it was covered in sand. So it quickly gets covered in sand. How could it be eroded by wind and sand if it doesn't take very long for it to, kind of get filled up with sand? Then how does wind and sand erosion even count? I've never seen anyone explain that away.
Well, it's the walls that are most fascinating to me, because the deep fissures that clearly look like rainfall. It looks like something that water does over thousands of years.
Yeah.
And when
There's those whales that were the Valley of the Whales. It's just about, I don't know how many miles south, but it's south of Cairo.
That's bonkers too.
Yeah.
That's crazy. They find whales. Hundreds of whales in the desert. That's so crazy. Look at that image. That's so nuts. That is so nuts.
Some of them had teeth and toes.
So crazy. So crazy. And then it makes you wonder, how did those bones survive? Why are they there? How quickly did they die? How quickly did they get covered up by sediment that they could find them all these years later? Because that's the weird thing about fossils and bones in general, is that most of them you're never going to find because they get eaten, they deteriorate, they're gone. It's very difficult to make a fossil. When you think about our, quote unquote fossil record, it's really weird because it's hard to make a fossil. Yeah. So we're dealing with a very small amount of beings that get turned into a fossil. And that is what we're using as our understanding of life.
Yeah, yeah.
It's weird.
It is weird. It is weird.
It's so weird.
I'm not sure do you know when I'm not even sure when that was. I mean, some people say that there's a mass flood during the kind of Younger Dryas period, which I think
they're talking about millions of years ago for these bones. Yeah. How old are these whale bones supposed to be? But millions of years ago, it's assumed that it was completely underwater, right? So are we talking like Pangea times? Like, what are we talking about?
I don't know. But even not too long ago, like, you know, kind of 12,000 years ago, they had these massive river systems, like the Tamanrasset River system.
Here it is.
40 million years old.
Yeah.
40 million years old?
But I don't know about the whales.
Oh, my God.
Primitive whales.
Primitive whales documenting, say that word, cetacean? How do you say that word? Cetacean transition? Is that how you say it?
I don't know.
Cetacean transition to marine life, sauridians and reptiles, as well as shark teeth from the Genaham Formation 40 to 41 million years ago. The strata in, I don't say that either, Wad al-Hitan belongs to Middle Eocene epoch, and it contains extensive vertebrate fossils within a 200-kilometer area. Fossils are present in high numbers and often show excellent quality of preservation. The most conspicuous fossils are skeletons and bones of whales and sea cows.
What's a sea cow?
I don't know, man.
Manatee?
You ever see the precursor whales, like where whales came from?
No, where did they come from?
It was an ancient animal that was like almost like a hooved wolf.
What, sea animal?
No,
Oh, you mean,
it was
so they
a
were
land animal. That's why they breathe air.
Oh, of course, they're mammals, aren't they?
Yeah.
That's weird.
It's super weird. It's super weird. It was some animal that supposedly lived on land and is real freaky looking, almost kind of like dog-like.
Yeah.
And that thing eventually
became a whale.
I just like swimming.
I'm going to go back
and
into
then
the
one
sea.
day it said, I'm never going back to the land. It's filled with assholes. I'm just going to live out here in the ocean where all you have to contend with is sharks.
This article calls it the god of death whale.
Wow, that's what it looked like. That's what it looked like.
That's pretty terrifying.
But there's some images of it on land, some depictions. Yeah, that's what it looked like. That freaky thing was what whales came from. That thing walked around the ground and then eventually said,
If it's 40 million years ago, is that what those skeletons are then? Maybe.
Interesting. Some of them maybe, right? Because they do know that thing. It was when whales walked in Egypt. Wow. I was watching, I don't remember whose podcast it was. I wish I could remember. But we were talking to some guy that found definitive evidence of dinosaurs in Egypt. So if you go back far enough, there were dinosaurs living in that part of the world as well. What's that one image you just saw right there with the mouth open? Yeah, that one. That's crazy looking. Prehistoric whale ancestor. Look at that thing. Whoa. That's crazy.
Here's the sea cows.
What?
This image says a prehistoric sea cow was killed by a prehistoric croc.
Wow.
Then eaten by a tiger shark, but I don't know.
Boy. Life is hard where there's no doors. That's the problem with the ocean. There's no doors. There's nowhere to hide.
Yeah,
So it's just constant chaos. It is just constant things eating things in this 3D space where they can go up and down and side to side. And
that's feature, isn't it, man?
Yeah.
Killing everything else, and
yes,
we made it.
But we outdoors.
We did.
We figured out walls and doors, and that changed the game.
But we do that, Joe. That's the question. Would claim to think, and the kind of consensus always is that we didn't do until 12,000 years ago. We didn't settle down and form permanent communities until the Neolithic Revolution. And I think that's one of the major paradigms, if you like, that we have regarding our past that simply doesn't make sense in light of new evidence.
I also wanted to find the other side so that what we're left with is some truth. And not all stories can be fully debunked. And I've had my mind flipped a couple of times. You know, crop circles, hollow moons, some really shit have flipped me around.
Crop circles is a good one.
So weird.
Because when I first saw them, I'm like, what is that? And then I saw that these guys were doing them with boards and string. I was like, oh, it's just people being silly. And then I watched a whole documentary about how the energy that bent these things over caused these nodes to explode as if they'd been cooked in a microwave.
Correct.
I'm like, what? And then you find out that the actual stalks are woven together.
Correct.
It's not that they're pressed down, they're woven together. And that these are complex geometric designs that would have taken people weeks to map out. And there's no footprints leading up to it. There's no roads, no machinery, no evidence of any use of any kind of machinery. And these things appear like that. Like people have flown over an area and then flown back an hour or two later, and there's immense football field size, perfect geometry that no one can explain how it was created.
Correct. So the nodes in the stalks, a node is like a knuckle on your fingers. So those are for phototropism to bend toward. So what you're talking about is these things are bent over. They're bent over at right angles. It can only be done with high energy. But also around these crop circles, finding microscopic metallic spheroids in around the circles. And that's not a conspiracy theory. They're them. And there are these magnetic fields around the circles. And you can see videos online of people going into the circles and their hands start to get red. Things are happening to them. So I went into crop circles thinking it was all guys with boards. Mm-hmm. But then when you watch people with boards making a crop circle, it's a mess. They can't do this. And you cannot bend the nodes of reeds and weave them together in a perfect... You can't do it. So that was, as I'm doing the research, I'm like, all right, 99% of them are fake, but there's this 1% that I cannot explain.
The famous video where you see the orbs circling around the field in England and then the crop circle slowly starts to emerge, has that been debunked?
Semi. It's controversial. Because the guy releasing that video, I don't know his name offhand, allegedly went to a visual effects house.
Oh, boy.
And released it. But they somehow put that thing together in a matter of hours, which is suspicious. So in my episode, I said, all right, here's what the skeptics say. But in the 1990s, to do that kind of VFX work, because it looks real, I don't know. To me, I'm on the fence about it.
It's very convenient that they got the footage.
It is.
It
is. Operation Blackbird was a famous operation in 1990 to try and capture the footage live. Great researcher named Colin Andrews. And,
he's the guy with the books on crop circles, right?
Yes. He got a lot of support for Blackbird, and not only did the thing happen, he was totally embarrassed by it. And it was all like streaming live. A lot of people were involved. He's embarrassed. We find out later, while they're like waiting for the circles to happen, just a few miles away, there's a top-secret military operation doing whatever they're doing. He doesn't know what. And then he gets a knock on the door from someone, Men in Black, whoever it is, that first offers him money to stop his work, then threatens him with whatever, his family, and he doesn't know who this guy is. Back and look at the tapes, and he sees the guy in the background of like one of the TV crews. So the theory is some type of intelligence was into Blackbird, made to discredit him, and that was kind of the end of Colin Andrews, because he was a legit researcher at that point. Now he's fringe, now he's pseudoscience. But I get into that. Something I discovered. I never knew that there was intelligence involved. I didn't know that there was a military op, which is confirmed. It's wild.
So do you think they discredited on purpose?
Yes.
Interesting. To make the crop circle thing look foolish. But what is the crop circle thing? What is out of the believers, what is the best theory?
The belief is that it's a way to message craft. It's a landing site, or it's some type of communication.
But why would they do it in wheat fields?
It doesn't make sense to me. If you have the technology, just,
yeah,
pick up the phone. There's better ways than just mowing wheat down. But I don't understand.
Do you know one about the Mandelbrot set?
I've seen it.
Yeah. I think that one is really weird because I think it coincides with the fractal creation of the Mandelbrot set by these people that are into this kind of geometry and fractals. They're someone made the Mandelbrot set, which is essentially an infinite fractal of spectacular design.
And this is before Lorenz and the Lorenz attractor. I think it's before that, isn't it?
I don't know.
Before it was mainstream.
Yeah, before it was mainstream,
right.
Yes. And then when this thing appears and people are like, well, what is this design? And then they connect it to this Mandelbrot set, which is, someone would have to have some very esoteric information to be...
And it's the Mandelbrot using Fibonacci numbers.
Yes.
And the phi, the goal ratio.
And it's accurate.
It's accurate down to inches.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Well, maybe, but how and how long would it take and how much planning and how many people and what would you use? What is the technology that would use to bend those things over that way and weave them? It's very weird stuff.
It's weird.
Because it's these, the way these fractals work, it's this ratio in the geometry is like there's specific sizes. This one is half the size of that one, which is half the size of that one, and it goes on and on forever. And when you see it all, see if you can find the Mandelbrot set.
It's maybe the most spectacular crop circle.
It's weird. It's really weird because it's fucking enormous. Mm-hmm. You know, and it seems so stupid. Wow, there's a whole bunch of them. The Mandelbrot set is the one with the look like a heart. About that one right there. Yeah, that's it. That's the Mandelbrot set.
Yep, and there's some other fractals there as well.
I was looking at an article that says these two guys took on the challenge and did it for a TV show on the BBC.
They did. If you watch them do it, it's clumsy AF.
Yeah, it doesn't look as good. Like,
I was trying to find it.
Because I know they always say these guys did it, but like,
you can't really see it there. But those flattened reeds, they're woven together.
Well, some of the ones, go back to other crop circles. You had some other images before that. There's some other ones, those spirals.
Right.
Like that one right there. Yeah. That is fucking wild.
That's wild.
Like, this is multiple football fields long and wide. So how? Make that one a little bigger, please.
And one of these, I don't know if it's that one in particular, right next to Stonehenge. Like a tennis ball throw.
Like, that is crazy. To not, first of all, if you're on the ground, all right, just the measurements alone to make each one the equal distance between circles, you know, in the whatever 6 different blades that you have that stem from the center, they're all the same distance, they're all the same size.
The small circles are the ones that are most interesting, because how hard is that to do?
Right. And they're uniform. And it's like, what is that? Like, what the fuck is that? And if that is a hoax, it's so bizarre that it's only these 2 goofballs that were making really shitty ones with boards and strings. And yet there's hundreds, if not thousands, of these like really complex ones.
Yeah, those are the guys that are on. You can see them doing it live.
Yeah, but those guys, there's no way they had enough time to do these things.
And it looked terrible. Janky, look, he's just trampling it.
Yeah. I mean, look, you can certainly make crop circles with a string and a board. You certainly can make crop circles. But it always gets connected, like believing in aliens and everything else. But it's not, no one's even saying aliens. Like, it could be some sort of energy from something that we possess, something that humans possess, that they somehow or another aim at these areas. Like, what is that one above it? Go that one right there above, like right there. What the fuck is that thing? Look at that.
They are in the same count. 80% of them come from the same county in England.
Which is also weird.
Now, people will correct me in the comments, but I believe it's a hypercube, isn't it? Isn't that a 4-dimensional cube?
I don't know.
A tesseract?
It does look like it, but...
Like, what the fuck? How long would that... That seems like that would take a long time to do.
Stonehenge is under constant surveillance, and circles show up overnight.
Very weird stuff.
There's an interesting conspiracy to crop circles that we can get into later.
Wiltshire, the most crop circles in England.
Yes.
And it's mostly in England, too, which is also weird.
And it mostly...
Man, like, is there some sort of a theory by the kooks?
Ley lines. They're happening on these segments of energy that intersect.
What is that black and white, Jamie? Click on that one.
It's just a...
No. The one, that one. What the fuck is that? Wow.
Wow. On a mountain.
Crazy.
That could be in sand, I think. 'Cause it looks like sand dunes.
Is that what that is?
Circle 16.
That's crazy.
Well, I've never seen that one. It's wild.
I mean, just the amount of time that it would take to do these things. So, ley lines. So this is the theory?
That's a theory. Have you heard about ley lines?
Kind of.
It's this alleged grid of energy circles the Earth, and almost like how magnetic fields work. And these energy lines have intersection points. On these intersection points are things like stuff.
It's in snow on a mountain in France.
Wow. Where are the tracks in?
What?
Okay,
what the fuck is that?
So this
no
is...
footprints, no tracks.
Footprints right here.
Yeah, but that could be...
That could be the people that discovered it.
Right.
Though.
Oh, there's a guy that did it, though.
Oh, the guy,
it's an artist that did this. These aren't crop
it.
circles. This is an artist doing it. That's kind of
see.
what I was trying to say.
Fucking incredible. An artist did that?
Yeah, it has the guy's name on that first picture we had here.
Amazing.
Simon Beck.
So the artist angle is a conspiracy angle. There's John Lundberg, who was part of a group called CircleMakers.org, which is an art project and also a sociology experiment. He would make fake crop circles to see how people would react. Years later, Lundberg and some associates created a documentary called Mirage Men, which is an excellent documentary. And it's mostly about Richard Doty and his disinformation campaign on behalf of the Air Force to discredit the UFO community, drove Paul Benowitz nuts. Bill Moore, who's the guy who essentially brought Roswell out to the public. Bill Moore was taking payments and being fed information from Doty to muddy the waters in the UFO community. He finally came clean in '89, was booed off the stage at MUFON, and everything just unraveled. So it's all disinfo.
I booed him up.
He finally said, look, I've been working with the government. A lot of the stuff I've been saying, they told me to say. Majestic, all this stuff was coming from Doty, and they didn't want to hear it. And his career was basically over that day.
Wow.
Bill Moore. There was no Roswell story before his book. And, that was Doty. So the documentary about Doty was directed and put by Lundberg and his associates. Lundberg was one of the original circle makers that would make these fake crop circles to see how people would react. I just thought it was an interesting.
But it's interesting because clearly some people are making these. Mm-hmm. But, what was the origins of it? Because I'm sure you've seen that image from the newspaper of the devil with a scythe. You know what I mean? And they're talking about crop circles back in the 17 and 1800s.
1678.
Yeah, 1600s. Wow. First crop circle ever reported was in 1678. According to the story, farmer and a crop mower were arguing about the cost of harvesting the farmer's oat field. The farmer was furious at the mower's price and stormed off, swearing that the devil himself should harvest the crop. That night, a dazzling light lit up the oat field, and in the morning, the farmer discovered perfectly round circles in his crops. He was so frightened by the circles, which he thought could only have been so neatly mowed by the devil or some infernal spirit, that he abandoned any attempt to harvest the field. That's a little sketchy. You're scared of circles? Come on, pussy.
Really, though? If there were crops in my backyard, I would be a little nervous.
I would be curious. It's not terrifying, right? Mm-hmm. They're not something that would scare me away from harvesting my crop.
No, I'm more afraid of the government than I am of, that stuff.
Crop circles don't seem to be anybody.
No.
But it's so ley lines. So these things are to differentiate areas so they could see them from the sky. Is that the idea?
The ley lines, whatever, a mystical energy. It's not a scientific energy. And where the lines intersect is where you see sites like Machu Picchu, Giza, Stonehenge, all these ancient sites. There's the ley line.
Oh.
Ley lines is, it's semi-debunkable because if you can enough lines, you're going to find patterns. You're going to find geometry.
Right. You go looking for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Talking of pyramids, dude, this new pyramid shit that's just come out.
This is insane. Yeah, I was going to send this to you as well, Jamie. I'll send you one of the most comprehensive breakdowns of it on X because it's quite stunning. So apparently, through the use of LiDAR, they have discovered that there are enormous structures underneath the Great Pyramid that go kilometers deep into the earth with coils. So enormous pillars, and then these coils. They don't understand what it is because they're just looking at LiDAR images. But whatever this is a uniform structure. There's several pillars. And all of this is very, very, very weird.
Yeah, it's 600 meters descending down those cylinders, more stuff below it, and then there's additional structures inside of it. Yeah, that was crazy.
It's crazy. There's a guy, Jay Anderson, and he did a breakdown of it. Maybe this would be good. We could play this. It makes a little more sense when someone's explaining it to you.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we need somebody that's an expert here, not me and you.
Zawi Hawass, by the way, has said it's nonsense. So I don't know.
Already?
Yes. According to Graham Hancock. This is the wonderful thing about having Graham Hancock.
I texted Graham yesterday. I was like, yeah, what's going on with...
So click on that and go full screen, please.
How significant of a discovery this is.
Dun, dun, dun. I love the music. And geometry, so you know it's real.
You got to appreciate the dramatic intro.
What has just been announced in relation to the pyramids at the Giza Plateau and the plateau itself is so incredible, so awe-inspiring and narrative-shattering that I have been sitting here for the last hour trying to wrap my head around the implications of what we were just told. So this is pretty much breaking news because the new findings were announced on the 16th of March at a press conference held by the team who was studying the Great Pyramid of Giza, non-invasive technology that was first developed by Filippo Bionde and Corrado Malanga, called synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography.
Fuck, that's a
this
mouthful.
was used to explore the internal structure of the Great Pyramid of Giza, and the method leverages the analysis of micro moves typically generated by background seismic activity to achieve a high-resolution full 3D tomographic imagery of the pyramid's interior and subsurface components. The recent findings from deploying this technology are nothing short of mind-blowing, because what's been discovered is that there are huge structures coming down from the base of the pyramid deep into the bedrock, in fact over 600 meters deep, which then connects to structures that extend up to 2 kilometers below the surface of the ground. Massive internal structures connected to the base of the pyramid and extending deep, deep down. This is what we know so far.
Which friend?
One that you said it's bullshit.
Oh, that's not my friend. That's Zawi Hawass.
Okay.
Zawi Hawass is the head of antiquities in Egypt. He's like the head guy that talks to the archaeologists and gives the official narrative. In the past, he's been extremely hostile to Graham Hancock, but Graham Hancock and him have now become friends.
Oh, yes. I
and
do
they're
know this guy.
Coordinating. Graham is a lovely guy. People that like are enemies with him just need to get to know him and hang out with him. He's a genuine, real human being who's trying to find the...
Hey, brother, if there is such a thing as an ancient conspiracy theory, it's this. So I remember hearing Hancock come on your show back in like 2015 or 2017, and he was talking about Göbekli Tepe. And at that time, he had shared that the site was only approximately 5% excavated. It's the first video on my channel. It's like August 2017, and I shared the details of it. These pillars dates back 11,600 years. It appears to be purposely buried at the same time of the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe. This is fascinating. And excavations were continuing. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to backburn this topic of Göbekli Tepe for a little while, let them further their excavations, and I'll revisit this later when there's something new to share. So earlier this summer, I'm like, all right, let me go Göbekli Tepe and see what's new there. And I was astonished to learn that 5% figure was still the same. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I've watched your video.
Yeah. YouTube channel, Bright Insight. Subscribe.
Yeah.
Don't forget to shout it.
Undeniably strange. Your videos are undeniably strange. So some images where you could see what it kind of looks like along with this globalheritagefund.org story on it.
So
it was 5%.
Right. And figure is still the same as of 2023. Yeah. I had there's a lady who does tours there and corroborated the 5% figure. And then there's a gentleman named Hugh Newman, who's an author and also leads tours. And he indicated with me that what they were do, and I couldn't believe this, they're going to defer a full-scale excavation for future generations with a 150-year estimated time frame for a full excavation of Göbekli Tepe. And I'm like, wait a second. Are you serious? Like, this makes no sense. We're talking about arguably not just the world's oldest ancient site, but arguably the most mysterious, because it's like you were just saying, it's not supposed to exist. Based on everything we were taught in school, it's supposed to be the Sumerians. And then you have the site of Göbekli Tepe, made up of sophisticated pillars and concentric circles.
At least 5,000 years older.
Yeah, that older than almost 7,000 years in Stonehenge, and Stonehenge is a mystery of itself. Right. So I start Googling and looking into the details. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. How could they defer excavations for future generations when this may be the most important ancient site on Earth involving our mysterious lost ancient past? And so I started digging into this, and I couldn't believe what I found. So we're doing large-scale excavations, but that has since ceased. Just to clarify, they are still excavating Göbekli Tepe, but they have rolled back the large-scale excavations of the years prior, and they are focusing conservation and tourism management of the site. And like I said, with a 150-year time frame, and I'm like, wait a second. I can't, and I all the screenshots in that folder
because of funding.
Not so. Not only have they never claimed that it's related to funding, but this is where things get bizarre. Is that there's a Turkish conglomerate called the Doge Group, which consists of 250 companies within Turkey. It's $1 billion industry, and they're the ones that took over management and funding of the site back in 2017, and they announced this. At all places, the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos in 2016 is when they announced this partnership. Initial funding of $15 million. At that time, they set up the infrastructure for tourism. Roads, sidewalks, walkways, roofing platforms. And since then is when they dialed back the excavations. And I'm like, this makes absolutely no sense. So it has, let me just be crystal clear here. It has nothing to do with funding, and they've never claimed it has anything to do with funding. But the excuses they have said, one of which is that, well, we want to wait for future technologies to develop so we'll more safely excavate the site. And I'm like, wait a second, hold on a second. We're talking about pillars buried in dirt. It's 2024. Do not tell me that we do not have the technological capability to dig rocks up.
What would an alternative explanation?
So, okay, this is where things get fun.
Oh, boy.
So,
rabbit hole. Here we go.
Fun. I love a good rabbit hole.
Let me say a couple before I get into it. One of which is that them saying that they're waiting for a future technology to develop to safely excavate the site. What type of magical shovel or pressure wires are we talking about here?
Vacuum, a dirt vacuum.
Right. And since they're saying that they're continuing to excavate the site today, since they're saying they continue to excavate the site today, I'm like, well, which is it? Are you saying that you're doing so in unsafe methods? And I already know that's not the answer, because there's been no issue with destructing the site from digging it up. It's not like they broke a pillar and like, oh, dang, wait a second, we need to walk this back. We're not doing things safely. Right. That's not the case here. So there are a few explanations here.
Okay, here's what I want.
One of which is that the most logical explanation, this is the less conspiratorial one, which is that it has to do with money. Use Turkish conglomerate of people that are saturated with members of the World Economic Forum. For example, the CEO of the Doge Group is a member of the World Economic Forum. That may backburn the World Economic Forum for they're business people. They took over the site, and it's all about money now. Back in 2019, Göbekli Tepe had approximately 19,000 visitors yearly. Now it's at 500,000. Their focus, if nothing else, they're just trying to bring revenue in. It's all about money. Yeah, they don't care about excavating the rest.
$15 more million. It's not going to $15 more million in revenue.
Right, and they just want their money back. Okay,
right. Okay.
But I'm like, well,
that makes sense.
It makes sense.
To weigh in on that quick, it also the mystery plays. That site is probably the second most popular place on the planet with people like ourselves, and the more mystery is there, the more money. It's the more like we deal in mystery. So if they excavate everything and we know everything there is about that site and it's all super mundane and there's nothing cool about it anymore, that tit dries up and there's no milk coming out.
But how could it stop being cool?
I agree.
It doesn't make any sense.
I agree with that, but
that one doesn't make any sense.
That's Zahi Hawass. He's of the same opinion where I think a lot of the same things, happen in Egypt for the same reason. Zahi Hawass is quoted with saying that those New Age people, it doesn't matter what happens in Egypt, the New Age people, they come. It's about tourism. Ever since the Arab Spring, tourism in Egypt's been lower. So I think a lot of the same, we're going to talk in a minute about the hidden chamber in the pyramid that they've located and still haven't excavated for whatever fucking reason. I think that might be part of it. If you want to get super mundane and not conspiratorial, it's just a simple. The tourists keep coming while there's a mystery there. As soon as we open that up, it's just an empty chamber.
I don't think that.
Me
I think
either.
The mystery of the structures themselves that we have completely excavated is just so fascinating.
So let me be clear on Göbekli Tepe. It's somewhere between 5 and 10% excavated, which means that.
So it says that where only 10% or less have been uncovered.
None of which date back anywhere near remotely as Göbekli Tepe. And so just to put this into perspective, Göbekli Tepe, according to ground penetrating radar, consists of approximately 200 T-shapes. Only 72 of them have been unearthed. And as of just a few years ago, they're dialing that back to fully excavate them, which again, the 150-year time frame. And I'm like, this is entirely unacceptable. There could be hidden answers about our lost ancient past waiting to be discovered on these pillars, because all the pillars tell us some sort of story. They all have depictions, animals, all kinds of things on them.
There's the shaman with the bag.
Right.
Which is very interesting.
Right. We've seen that from the Sumerians. We've seen it in South America.
The bag, very fascinating.
It is. It's hotly debated.
It was, I'm sure. I mean, you could say maybe it's a tool bag. You could say maybe it's psychedelics he's got in that bag.
Academics say it's just water. It's a water bucket.
You guys familiar with the work of Martin Sweatman?
Excuse me?
You guys familiar with the work of Martin Sweatman?
Yeah.
No, I am not.
He's the one that he was on Ancient Apocalypse season 1 for a minute. He's the guy who's made basically a star map of that pillar 43, and in his opinion, those 3 handbags at the top were 3 sunrises. And if that's the case, that would almost make sense, because then like a picture of an Assyrian holding that would be like a holding of astronomical knowledge. Like this symbol could have been a symbol of knowledge of astronomy, which is one thing, honestly, about Göbekli Tepe.
Could have been a book bag.
It could have been a book
bag.
Right?
I mean, it kind of makes sense. They probably had to travel around with their books.
So here's that pillar, that's just one pillar out of 200. And here we are debating. We don't even know what it is. It's all conjecture.
Pull that up. You can see what that pillar looks like.
So this Göbekli Tepe situation is far more bizarre than we've described so far.
I think the logical explanation, though, is that you have massive tourist revenue coming to see it as is. Why spend more money and excavate these things?
I think that's
the pillar.
I think that's the most logical explanation, but it could be more insidious than that, because
that's pillar.
That's pillar 43, the most debated one of them all, and there's approximately 128 more pillars that are still buried in the earth.
What's that bird doing? Dr.
Martin Sweatman, his first paper on Göbekli Tepe's pillar 43, he's got Scorpio in the bottom. He believes that's Sagittarius, that's the sun, and if that's one. Basically, it's a star map denoting the time that the comet smacked the Earth. Is what he believes. Each one of those V's. His latest paper on it, each one of those V symbols is a day. In his opinion, each one of those boxes is a month. And there is basically a full year denoting the whole thing, the way he's broke it down. It's very interesting stuff. And one of the things that's wild to me, when we talk about like the lack of further excavations, is almost every pillar we bring up has new symbology, new symbols, new iconography. If we're trying to find some sort of ancient proto-language or something, we need more symbols. We need more things on Earth.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's completely opposed by the mainstream archaeology. The idea that these guys had any sort of written language is fucking ridiculous.
And what are the things involved in, I know it's been theorized that it was purposely covered in dirt.
It really looks like it. If you look at pictures of excavation, it looks like it was all piled with stones and dirt, because if it was some sort of natural event, it would have destroyed the pillars. The pillars are preserved. So it was blown in with dust. If you look at it's gravel, and like as Graham Hancock has explained, that Klaus Schmidt, the original excavator of the site before his untimely leaping in 2014, the people that have worked the site believe it was buried. That is debated in academia today.
But isn't there a carbon isotope dating of the ground soil that shows it's the same age throughout the entire whatever feet it is of the dirt that's covering it?
And so it's very apparent that it was purposely buried. Interesting about that is that it coincides exactly with the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe. So if you want an alternative idea, we could talk
mudslides.
No, because it would destroy those pillars.
Knock them over at least.
Yeah. That's I've seen that in the statues. Right. So let's talk about this second. This is where things get wild. So
before the excavation, this is an aerial photo from what year is this?
That 2004. Or excuse me, that would be before 1994. Yeah. They started excavations in 1994, 1995.
So it was just dirt. They thought it was just a regular hillside, which makes you wonder how many more there are out there.
Well, there are findings of other sites around Turkey
that
are even older.
And
even older.
Yes. So let me tell you a few things about Göbekli Tepe. When you bring up pictures of the pillars, notice how they all annotate animals on them.
Yeah.
Now, this is a fun topic, and I have a few other things to share. One of which is that if you want to talk about reasons not to excavate it, I'll give you 2 possibilities. And this is just conjecture. I don't know what the answer is. Let me say this up front. But part of it could have a religious implication as well as a climate change implication. Let me start with that. So we know it is an established fact that the Younger Dryas catastrophe happened between 12,800 and 11,600 ago. We know that there was vast changes in weather patterns throughout the northern sphere. The only part of it that's debated, and as well as near extinction events or extinction events of many different mammals in North America. But what we know is it happened, whatever it is what's debated, whether it's a cosmic impact, whether it's a pole shift, whether it's sun cycles, all kinds of conjecture all the way around. When I mentioned the WEF, they are the proponents of the man-made climate change narrative. They're the ones that want to get rid of gas-powered stoves. They want us to get rid of vehicles. They are pushing their initiatives around the world, and they believe that we're destroying the planet. And they're entirely wrong, but I don't agree with their ways of going about it, but that's aside. But here's the thing. When you look at the legend of Noah's flood and Noah's Ark and the flood, so I'm not suggesting that there was a flood that covered every mountain on Earth, and nor am I suggesting that there was a boat that housed every species of animal on Earth. However, if Noah's Ark existed, many believe that it was crashed to Mount Ararat, which is also in Turkey. And something fascinating is that in the Bible, in Genesis 8:20, some of the first verses after Noah from the flood, is that he was said to have constructed an altar to the Lord, sacrificed some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird. Göbekli Tepe is in Turkey, and every single one of the pillars annotates animals. And some have suggested that it could be Noah's altar. Now, that could be one reason why they excavate it, is because Turkey is an Islamic country. If there was some Christian religious belief that was corroborated, they might not want that to happen. Another possibility is that the site itself might corroborate the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe. And when we're in a time frame where they don't like talking, academics, they don't like talking about cataclysms. They want to pretend they didn't happen. They want everything to be man-made change.
Well, I think people can develop these patterns of behavior that are destructive with anything, whether it's with alcohol or cannabis or sex or anything. People get in ruts, and it doesn't mean that the cannabis is bad. It means that you are on a bad mental path.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm not encouraging it for everybody because some people it genuinely biologically doesn't jive with them.
Yeah. But the main thing is, we as adult human beings need to take responsibility for our own lives, our own decisions. And we need not hand that responsibility over to governmental institutions, especially when it concerns something as intimate and personal as our consciousness. And my view is the ancient world had the right attitude to this kind of thing, and the modern world does not, and that we can sit down and learn a lot from the ancient world. A lot of people ask me, Hancock, you've been arguing that there's been a lost civilization in the human story, but what sort of civilization do you think it was? Well, one of the things I think is it was a civilization that used psychedelics. I think it was a civilization that emerged from shamanism, but did not stay at the hunter-gatherer stage, but that took the essence of shamanism and integrated it into a very different kind of civilization from our own, which pursued things in different ways. A lot of archaeologists have said to me, but we don't find any plastic bottles the Ice Age. That means there was no advanced civilization during the Ice Age. Well, hang on. Maybe an advanced civilization might have decided never to get into plastic in the first place. Maybe there would have been a clear choice not to make plastic. Maybe they did things in completely different ways. Maybe they cultivated powers of the human mind. So we dismiss and regard as completely unimportant. Woo-woo.
Yeah, this is the thoughts about Egypt.
About Egypt and about other things. I mean, the specific example I give is above the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid are 5 further chambers. And these chambers are roofed and floored with granite beams that weigh about 70 tons each. And there are hundreds of them. And these 70-ton granite beams, which to put in context, a 70-ton beam is equivalent in weight to 35 large SUVs. These 70-ton granite beams have been elevated to a height of more than 350 feet above the ground and carefully and precisely placed in position. It is very hard for archaeologists to explain how that was done using purely leverage and mechanical advantage. You can say, perhaps they built a ramp and hauled the stones up the ramp. But then you have to confront basic laws of physics. You can't haul a stone weighing tens of tons up a slope that exceeds 10 degrees. Then you start doing the calculation. How long a ramp do I need with a 10-degree slope to get to 350 feet above the ground? And the answer is you need a fucking long ramp. which should still be there, because it couldn't have been a sand ramp. It would have collapsed under the weight of those stones. It had to be as massive as the pyramid itself. So this begins to seem like an absurd idea, the idea that is foisted on us by archaeology. Maybe the idea that they regard as absurd, namely that psychic powers were cultivated by ancient civilizations, that they could use powers of the human mind that we have allowed to lapse. Maybe that idea deserves further consideration. We have gone down a path of leverage and mechanical advantage. We're used to relying on machines, but we hear anecdotal reports of people who have telekinetic powers, who can move things with their minds, of people who have telepathic powers. And our automatic reaction is to just dismiss all of that because science says it's impossible, because science regards consciousness as local to the brain and doesn't see how it can exert itself outside of that. But maybe we should open up to those possibilities, that we're dealing with a very different kind of culture that used techniques that we have allowed to lapse. And maybe we could wake those techniques up again. Maybe the ability of human beings to do almost superhuman things is resident within all of us, but sleeping.
Well, there's speculation that they use some sort of a telekinetic power, but it's
pure
absolute,
speculation.
But it's absolute that they did something that we don't understand. If you think about the distance between us and the construction, just the modern accepted construction dates of the Great Pyramid, it's more than 5,000 years ago, or close to 5,000 years ago.
Great Pyramid's about 4,500, yeah.
That's really old.
It's incredibly old, yeah.
To think that someone back then could do something that would perplex us today with modern machinery.
Yeah.
And that somehow or another they figured this out. It's almost like what they had done was leave behind something that was so stupendous, so monstrously impressive that it would transcend time.
Yeah.
And that you would have to look at it even thousands and thousands of years later and say, hey, like this defies conventional explanation. This is not a simple, and I've seen some of the conventional explanations of the construction of the pyramid, and they conveniently neglect those chambers above the king's chamber.
They do.
They conveniently neglect a lot of those massive stones.
Yeah.
And it's because it's one of those things you just go, I don't know. What is this, Jamie?
There are the chambers above the king's chambers, and each one of those floors consists of a row of 70-ton granite blocks that have been raised 350 feet above the ground. And not only that, but brought from Aswan in the south of Egypt, 500 kilometers south of the Great Pyramid. So,
if there's any time in history where you could go in a time machine and go back and observe, would that be the time?
I'm just completely fascinated by the Ice Age at the moment.
If you had been shot to go back and see what it was like in some place, you wouldn't go to the construction of the Great Pyramids?
I think right now where I'd go is 12,800 years ago in the beginning of the Young Earth.
Just to see.
Because I think that's where the whole human story changes. I think that's where we change tracks from one path to another path. And following those cataclysmic events of the Younger Dryas between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago, following those, the signs of civilization that we see emerging are not the beginnings of civilization. They're a restarting of civilization that had existed before the cataclysm. And for that reason, I would like to be present during that cataclysmic event, if only to satisfy myself that it was indeed a comet. You see, the one thing there's no dispute about anymore is that the Younger Dryas was a cataclysm. You can't argue about that. The megafauna that die off, the disruption of human activity that takes place at that time, the huge climate changes. This was a cataclysm by any standards. Where the argument still goes on is what caused the cataclysm. I vote strongly for comet, multiple fragments of a comet hitting the North American ice cap and hitting Greenland as well. But there are other researchers in the field, like my colleague Robert Schoch, who thinks that the sun is more involved. This is healthy. This is very, very healthy, that we should be approaching this problem from many different perspectives and trying to figure out what the fuck caused this extraordinary event that occurs at a pivotal moment in the human story. The end of the Stone Age, the beginning of the Mesolithic, the end of the Ice Age, the beginning of the current age of the Earth. And suddenly we see these signs of civilization appearing, and in places like Göbekli Tepe, those signs already include highly sophisticated knowledge. And that's why I feel we really need to investigate the Amazon. There are 3 places in the world which are really lacking in the investigation right now. One of them is the Amazon, 5.5 million square kilometers, very little archaeology done. Another is the Sahara Desert. The Sahara Desert tough place to work. I can understand why there's little archaeology done there. But the Sahara Desert was green during the Ice Age. It had a completely different climate regime. We should consider the possibility that missing parts of the human story are there. And then under the continental shelves, because sea level rose 400 feet. These are three domains that archaeology has largely not investigated, and it has largely not done so. They say, well, why would we spend the money on marine archaeology? It's much better to spend it on looking for shipwrecks rather than looking for signs of a lost civilization, because we archaeologists know there was no lost civilization. So that's the argument for the resources there, and the same with the Amazon, and the same with the Sahara Desert. The very places in the world that those amongst us who are charged with the responsibility of interpreting the past have not looked at are the very places we should be looking at.
Like, I remember when they were talking about things like the face on Mars, and you're like, what? That sounds so kooky. And then you see pictures, you go, hey, man, what is that? Why don't I hear about that in school?
Yeah, well, we had Richland on night after night after night after night for weeks on end when that came out. And actually, that face on Mars had to do with my career path, actually.
Well, so what's your take on all this? Because one of the things that happened was with the face on Mars is the initial images were very grainy but fascinating, because it did kind of look like a face, but maybe even more remarkable, because sometimes there's faces like in the side of a rock, it looks like a face. More remarkable was the geometric pattern of the base of it.
Yeah.
And so I kind of dismissed that when the second images came out. So this is the original image. This is the original image that freaked everybody out. They were like, oh my God, there's a face on Mars. And then they came up with these upgraded images, and I was like, well, that's not a face. It's just weird shadows, and it's probably just a mountain. But man, that's an odd shape.
Or that face has been doctored.
It could be true.
Yeah.
But also, then I looked at it and was like, that shape is interesting. Like, it almost looks unnatural. Then the new images from very close to Cydonia that show a very clear square. This one's nuts, because this one is somewhere in the neighborhood of between plus 300 meters. Like, they don't know how much longer it is than 300 meters, but it's the minimum size of this thing is 300 meters across. And it's a full-on square. Right angle, right. It's like, what the hell is that?
Well,
pull that picture up, Jimmy.
As a geologist, I was fascinated when Hoagland first started talking about what was happening here. So,
what's up, Jamie? Oh, that one. Yeah. The one that we bring up all the time.
Well, anyways, which one, though?
Oh, it don't matter.
Some of
Just
them are
click
doctored.
on any of them.
Some of them are doctored, though.
Yeah, the non-doctored one, the one next to it, like right there. Look at that. That's absolutely crazy.
So I don't know if I'm very familiar with this image. I don't know if you can see with your mind's eye. You're looking the lower left. That's a 90-degree angle. If you can see the rest of the 90-degree angle up at the top and over at the side, if you can trace out, that is one massive right there. Now you can see it. Yeah, the computer has cleaned it up. Nature does not work in 90-degree angles. You're not going to get wind erosion. Wind is called aeolian erosion. Fluvial erosion is water erosion. You're not going to get 90-degree angle from wind or water. So one of the tenets in archaeology, when you see 90-degree angles, there's an intentionality underlying that. If it were a one-off, you could say maybe it's a fluke, and it's not. And this is Mars. Jamie, I don't know if you do this. Through Freedom of Information, NASA had to release all of the lunar images up through the Clementine mission. And they didn't want to do that. And when they did release them, they ended up pixeling out a whole bunch of stuff, which made it look even more obvious than it was.
They're just fucking with us at this point.
So you got to, what is it on the lunar surface that we paid for with our taxes that we're not supposed to be seeing? And these were tower structures. Can you see the Clementine?
Are there any undoctored and blurred versions of it that some
I haven't
nerd
seen them in the
snuck out of
public.
the office?
I haven't seen the public domain.
But you've seen it?
No, but what I'm saying is through Freedom of Information, what
right,
they
but
were
if you have the undoctored images.
No, what forced to release, why in the world would they be pixelating the images that are on there that actually make them look even more obvious than they are? So what we're seeing, what Hoagland was talking about, what you're seeing on Mars is not happening in a vacuum. It's happening, seeing the same thing on the lunar surface to varying degrees. On Mars, there were 3-sided, 4-sided, 5-sided pyramids.
Look at the one in the upper right-hand corner. That's odd.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very odd.
So here's the kicker. We're sending the Viking probes, one Viking 2 in the 70s, went to Mars. 19,000 images were captured from the orbiting part of the mission. The other craft landed on the surface, and I can just imagine being on the surface seeing this. It's like this thing is like a spider comes down a cloud of dust, and this little tube pops up, and some sticky dental floss shoots out, and then they reel it in to collect dirt and microbes, and they reel it into broth because they're looking for evidence of life on Mars, and it's happening next to massive monuments and geometric structures that are now dated about 50,000 years BP before present. So they're looking for micro signs of life next to the most massive signs of life that you could imagine.
You said they're dated to 50,000 BC, these structures? BP before present. So how do they know that?
Those were when the Cydonia mission, that's the Cydonia scientists are I think 50,000 years, and the same with the lunar. I'm hesitating.
But the Cydonian, how are they estimating that? If they're using probes from that far away?
They're using probes, and they're using, it's relative dating. They're looking at strata and like that. And from the lunar sites, they brought back samples. And I'm hesitating because I don't know how deep you want to go with all this. But the samples that came back from the surface had traces of metals that do not occur naturally in nature. They are the product of, advanced machinery. And
what metals?
Metals that came back when they brought back from the Apollo mission. And I think they brought back, I need the names. That's one Jamie can look up, what the metals were that came back, and they don't know where those metals
are from. Metals from Cydonia, or is this metals from the moon?
This is from the lunar sites in the crater.
So the structures on the moon, how old they think they're the same age as the structures on Cydonia?
They're estimating 50,000 BP. There's a race for the moon right now. And I'm fascinated by this. There was a time only 2 nations on Earth had the money and the technology to go to the moon. It was the former Soviet Union and the former United States, because neither one's the same country anymore. And both those countries have been so broke, they haven't been able to do it. India and China are now sending the probes to the moon. We were going to the moon during the Cold War, and it was a crazy time. It was actually a very civilized war. I mean, the government's war, but the scientists were still cooperating. And there was agreement that we would not share publicly what was on the lunar surface, and Russia did the same thing. But China was never to that agreement. So China has said when they land, they're going to televise live what they find on the lunar surface to the people of the Earth. My sense, Joe, and this will lead into a whole conversation we're going to have here, I think they'll find the archaeological structures that we know are there, that we've seen in the photographs. The inscriptions on those structures we're going to be able to read, because there's a thinking that those structures are from ETs from another time, but the evidence suggests they're from us, from a time in our past cycle of civilization where we did great and beautiful things working together until we destroyed one another through war, and that we're repeating that cycle again. So when they send
that along a lot of conclusions, isn't there other possibilities for what happened to them?
Well, this is where I'm going. When they see what's on those temple walls, they're going to see inscriptions in languages that we already recognize, and that will be the smoking gun, like cuneiform, because this is what the researchers who are working on these projects right now, and they're combining this with so many of what the ancient texts have always told us. And this is where it gets into a really kind of a sticky conversation, because it depends on how people interpret these things. I'm excited for this, and this is obviously no ordinary time in the history of our world, and they're pushing for war. We're on the verge of global war. What would it mean if we found on the lunar surface evidence of us, humans from another time, leaving a message in our languages, cuneiform, Sanskrit, those kinds of things? It could be one of the most unifying factors. Right, we're on the precipice of war.
I completely agree, but we have to make a lot of leaps in order for that to be real. Like, we haven't seen any writing, so why would they assume that there's a bunch of different kinds of writing in different languages?
Actually, they have seen.
Who's they?
Well, when our space program, I think you've had guests on that have talked about this in the past, I think. When our space program was active, there were broadcasts from the lunar surface that were cut off, and astronauts had seen things that they were not allowed to see and not allowed to share.
That's what I heard. It sounds fun.
Yeah.
It sounds really fun. I want to believe that.
Well, and in this world now, and on their deathbed, they can't believe that this hasn't been made public already. So there have been, recordings and videos and things, and I think they're authentic.
Right. There's like, we haven't got boots on the ground in Cydonia, right? So
no, not Cydonia.
So how are they seeing these inscriptions? Are you saying these inscriptions are on the moon?
Yeah, lunar surface. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
lunar
surface. I was confused. So these astronauts are saying that on the surface of the moon, they saw writing.
They've seen
structures.
Massive structures.
But what about the writing?
There were roots that they had seen the writing, but we can't buy those. We can't verify those.
Okay. So this is podhead talk.
Well, yes and no.
Kind of, a little bit, because if there's no evidence at all, that there's not even an interview with a guy who talks about when I was on the moon, I saw writing.
Well, you start going into the ancient texts.
Okay.
And the traditions that are relating our relationship to intelligences from beyond this world.
Yes, a lot of that.
And there's a lot.
There's a lot of that in various religions too.
Well, this is what's important. It is in religions, but I think you can break out their historical text and there's religious text. So, if you're reading the Bible, there's religion history in the Bible. If you're looking at Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian text from the Mesopotamian era, they're telling similar stories, and you've had guests talking about this, where the stories are similar, but the religion is not part of that. And so I think what we're doing, we're kind of beating around the bush to a conversation here, and that's why I've hesitated a couple of times, because I just don't want us to, to get so down one side that...
Oh, don't that. That's what this show's all about.
Okay.
We should call the show Rabbit Holes. Because people are always in the middle of talking about one thing and they pivot. It doesn't matter.
Well, I think this is all in the disclosure and what's happening, the reluctance to have the full disclosure.
Right. We've talked about it multiple times.
Yeah.
I'm sure were you in that documentary, The Age of Disclosure?
No.
You've been in a lot of documentaries.
I have been in a lot.
It's hard to remember.
I've been in a lot, and a lot of what was left on the cutting room floor.
Always.
And there's a couple of reasons. One thing I learned, Joe, and maybe you've learned this as well, if you're going to be a documentary, ask if you are on the front end of the filming or the back end of the filming.
What does that mean?
Here's the reason. Are you one of the early interviews or are you one of the later interviews?
Okay.
And here's the reason. They'll develop an arc in a storyline. And if you're early on, they're going to ask you questions to support that arc in that storyline. 5 interviews down, somebody's going to come on and they're going to introduce something, and the producer going to say, oh, there's a new arc and a new storyline, and now everything that you interviewed for may not be relevant in that conversation anymore. So,
well, I don't think you can control that. So
you can ask. You just ask. You say, we're in the shooting process, and if you're the first one, say, maybe come back and interview me.
Yeah.
A little bit later on.
Is it your belief that there was a civilization on Mars that were us, and that we migrated to Earth and then eventually populated Earth? Is that what you're thinking? Or that we coexisted in both places?
I think we did. And
it's so crazy to say.
Really?
And yeah, it does. It does. Well, you probably travel in different circles. But I mean, to the rational people, most people hear that and they go, what, there were people on Mars? But as time goes on and more discoveries, we find out just about the structures that are on Earth and how old they might be, and the actual age of Homo sapiens, like how old we might actually be. Where a lot of, like, they found that skull in China the other day. That was have you seen this? It's a 1,000,000-year-old Homo sapien skull, but Apparently, there's some debate about it. They're going back and forth. But at the very least, it's in the conversation of human beings possibly have existed, at least in this form, for 1 million years, which is kind of nuts. Anybody who's interested, what is the name of that video that you put out?
I think it's an ancient structure, like it's said to be greater than pyramids. I try to tease it a little bit, but it's on my channel. I mean,
well, it was a good tease. You got me.
Thank you.
I dove right in, and I remember I was in the gym while I was watching it, and I literally stopped working out. And I was like, okay, I got to pause this because this is not something that I can consume while I'm working out. I need to like really pay attention to this because it's so wild.
Yeah, and I honestly that I'm grateful for how like that video took off. Like for me, it took off way bigger than ones that I've done in the past. I talked about the labyrinth in the past, and it's a much longer video, and I was really glad to get the chance to dive into these details because I've been wanting to visit the labyrinth for a long time. However, there's just been recently new data that came up about things that happened a decade or two ago, or inside the last decade, that really changed that picture. It was things like the Merlin Burrows scans that correlated other scans and also reported on, there seems to be a metallic object down. This isn't sort of crazy emerging science. This is a legitimate company that is using technology that's been well established in defense and in the UK. It came out of the UK military as a technology that's been more or less proven. So, and the guy that Tim Akers, rest in peace, unfortunately he's since passed, but he, what he said about this object, like, he is a credible guy to say this. He doesn't draw conclusions about what it might be, but it's not wood, it's not stone, it's metal. It's not unlike other metal that he's seen, although he didn't classify what exact type of metal it is. But he said, there is in this central atrium, because the labyrinth has multiple levels, and it's almost like imagine yourself standing in a shopping mall, and you have that central atrium where you can see all these levels, and it's like this big central chamber that connects to these multiple levels. It's open. It's at least 40 meters long. It's really tall, and in the center of it is what's more than 40 because it contains this single sort of 40 meter long object that's sitting in.
So how did you find out about the labyrinth? Like this is something that has been talked about for a long time.
Thousands of years.
But no one, it's not in any like traditional archaeology books. It's not.
It is.
Is it?
Yeah. No, so the labyrinth is kind of, this is the other part that drew me to it. Is that it isn't something that's coming out of left field, right? It's not like this, no one ever heard of this before. It's literally a structure that was written about extensively over hundreds of years in antiquity. Authors like Herodotus, Diodorus Siculus, Pliny the Elder, Strabo, Polonius Mela. Like there's all of these writers of antiquity, and you're talking about time frames from like 500 BC up to the 1st century AD, had visited it, and they'd written about it and talked about it, and they gave it legend. Guys like Herodotus said that it surpasses the pyramids in grandeur, and then you have this is from Herodotus's Histories in the 5th century BC, and he says, "For this I saw myself, and I found it greater than words can say. For if one should put and reckon up all the buildings and all of the great works produced by the Hellenes, the Greeks, they would prove to be inferior in labour and expense to this labyrinth." So he's saying that all of the temples of the Greeks, ancient Greece, you've been there, you've seen the Acropolis, and just if you added them all up, the labour to produce them would be inferior in what it would take to just make this one thing in Egypt, the labyrinth, underground, right?
How do conventional archaeologists approach this? Do they discuss this at all?
So they do. It's been discussed. What happened was, so we always kind of knew where it was. So you have the classical authors of antiquity, which coincides with what you might call the Ptolemaic period of Egypt. It's the transition from dynastic Egypt into becoming essentially a Roman province, like an imperial province of Rome, and that runs you up to about 400 or 500 AD, and then sort of civilization we have the Dark Ages, sort of have Roman Empire collapses, and it's not until again you get to the Renaissance and you have artists and other authors are looking at these historical accounts and they're talking about drawing it. Some of the depictions you see from the labyrinth are in that, and again not until the emergence of what I would call modern archaeology in the 18th century. So guys like Carl Lepsius, 1700s, started to look at these accounts and go and survey the place where they said it was. So, Herodotus and these authors, I selected the quotes here to just, there's a lot more that they say about it. But one of the they talk about is they kind of give descriptions of where it is. They say it's near what was called Lake Moeris. and it's near a city that was the temple of the crocodiles, Crocodilopolis, or ancient Arsinoe is the other name for it. And we know where that is. And Lake Moeris sort of somewhat still exists. It's much smaller now, but it's in this region called the Fayum of Egypt. So if you ever look at Egypt on a map, you can imagine it's desert, and you have from north to south, you have this green line of the Nile, traces it down. But on the left side, you look at, there's this leaf-shaped depression that's all green. It's called the Fayum. It's a depression which used to flood with the Nile. Today they use it for agriculture. And it's right at that neck, the Fayum, where it connects up to the Nile Valley. And he also described it, they also described the pyramid that's at the site, because there is the pyramid to Amenemhat III on that site. So they give us all these descriptors, and everyone agreed, yeah, so it's at this place called Hawara, where I've been to several times. There's still a pyramid there, and there's these great fields of sand and like little open-air libraries with chunks of stone. And what happened was, so Carl Lepsius went there, and he said, well, I've discovered the ruins of like a Roman town that's built on the surface. There's nothing crazy about it. Flinders Petrie was the guy who kind of got the closest. Now, Petrie went there in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and he was excavating. He dug down 7 or 8 meters. He got down and he found this massive stone slab of beton or plaster that was huge, like 1,000 feet long. Like it was he sort of traced the edges of it. And he's like, I'm standing on the foundation of the labyrinth. So what he's like, it's all gone. Like it's basically, Petrie said, it's been quarried. This place has been a source of stone for literally millennia. So it's gone. So pretty much everyone since then in archaeology, Egyptology is like, and if you look on Wikipedia, they'll tell you, oh, it's gone. It was destroyed. Was quarried away. Petrie says, I'm standing on the foundation of it, the bottom layer, and that's it. There's nothing here. And that's always been kind of the position of orthodox Egyptology. Look in the textbooks, that's where it is. But that's all changed because there's been a whole bunch of different now scientific expeditions. This is where it gets into some intrigue, because the Matahar expedition, the Cairo University expedition, I mean, these happened. Lots have come out since, but they were covered up at the time. They were suppressed. So the first guy to
What year was
2008 was the Matahar expedition.
They were covered up.
Yes. Yeah. So what
sorry,
it was, and look, and not my words. This is the words of Louis de Cordier, he's a Belgian artist and entrepreneur who drove the Matahar expedition. He did it in conjunction with Antiquities, which at the time was helmed by Zahi. Also with the NRIAG, which is the National Research Institute for like basically subsurface studies. So that's those guys dragging that box around. So they used a whole bunch of different techniques to look at these areas around that are things like ground penetrating radar, geomagnetism, very low frequency, like tomography, electrical resistivity tomography. There's a bunch of different techniques that are well established. Known science. This isn't like the cuff scan stuff where it's like you can debate the merits of the technology. This is established technology. And they found the labyrinth. And what he found is that, yes, so what Lepsius said about the ruins of a Roman or Greek or Persian town with mud bricks and stuff, yep, that's there in the first few meters. You go down, then you hit the water table. So that's the other issue on this site is the water table. So the water's at like 5 meters below this. And under that is the slab that Petrie found. So like 6-7 meters is at that huge slab that found that he thought was the foundation. And then below that, Petrie didn't dig deep enough. Below that, we can find a labyrinthian structure of granite and very, very dense rocks and walls and like a maze-like structure that has walls that are meters thick. There's another great slide in there that's and it's the actual VLF right. That's it there. So this is at 8 meters with VLF sounding, so you can see like this labyrinthian structure of these walls and all of these lines and walls. So these are like granite, and the scale of this, it's 100 meters. Vertically by 150 meters.
100 meters tall?
Well, no, so...
Vertically?
No, so the y-axis, I guess, of this, so we're looking down in the ground, but you got to look at the scale. Like across the top, that's 150 meters, right? So, I mean, 450 feet? So these are big walls. These are big chambers and big walls.
For almost like a football field.
Well, it's more. I mean, 100...
More. 100 meters.
In Australia, it's 100 meters is the football field, I think. I don't know how big.
Yeah,
it's
it's 100 yards. What is the difference between 100 yards and 100 meters?
It's 100 yards. Little less. So 150 meters, and this is only a section of the labyrinth. They scanned 2 sections. The labyrinth itself is said to be much, much larger than this. So they found...
Much larger than that?
Oh, that's huge. Yeah, no,
so what is the overall structure? Like,
it's like 1,000 feet, like 3, 4, 5 times that size. I mean, you have to go back to the We have some better indication with the more modern space scans now, but when they did the geophysical, like the ground penetrating radar scans, so they scanned 2 areas. That was the bigger one, like in front of the pyramid. Then they did another one on the other side of the canal that runs through the day, and they found it on both sides. So that's the difference between like what we say about the lab, like what the textbooks will tell you about the labyrinth, it not being there and it being destroyed. No, we've actually, now there's been the Matterhorn expedition, confirmed it was there. And so what happened, this was interesting, and I have, I think, reasoning for what happened, but it was covered up. And these are the words like Louis de Cordier, he eventually got sick of waiting, because what happened in Egypt, anything you do, whether it's you're an academic institution or you're an individual or a group that's funding some sort of edition, you work with the Council of Antiquities today, it's the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities. But they essentially, it takes years to get access. And then once you do, though, they control release of information. So that's always part of the deal, right? It's that Egypt gets to do the announcing, and if and when we choose.
And they dismiss things in the past that they then accepted later.
Yeah, a great example is the Scan Pyramids project. So they got ahead of themselves a little bit. This is the muon detection, the cosmic ray detection stuff. They've been running that experiment for years at Giza in the Great Pyramid. They and every time I go in there, there's always different sets of equipment at different places on it. But these muon detectors, they have them under the ground and in the Grand Gallery, and it's years to collect data. Occasionally, these cosmic particles, they'll pick one up, and you're able to detect voids, or they can somehow tell the difference between it traveling through solid matter versus a void. It takes years to build up a resolute picture. But once they did, they said, oh, okay, so we've discovered that big void in the pyramid. They'd also discovered the small void at the main entrance. If you look up at it today, there's those chevron blocks, like above. You go in down here at the Al Mamoun's tunnel, but at the top where the descending passage actually hits the pyramid, the original entrance, there's these big chevron blocks, and behind that's that chamber. So you remember a few years ago they made a big fuss. And as an example, like when the Scan Pyramids guys on their own initiative announced that we've made these discoveries, I mean, Zahi came out and said, this is bullshit, this doesn't exist, there's nothing there and there's something there, we knew about it already, and you go on a couple of years, and when now it's time to do the press releases and to roll out, the footage, and who's standing at the podium making the announcement and showing the footage, Zahi's doing it.
Has to. Yeah. Situation over there with him.
Yes. I did a video, I just released it a few days ago, got into some even more intrigue about stuff that's happened at Giza at the Giza Plateau in the 1990s, which we can get into that too. But so yeah, what happened with the Matterhorn expedition and the labyrinth was that 2008 and 9 they finished their on-site, they're ready to release the data. They put on a very small public Ghent University in Belgium, no one really attended it. And then they told to start, and again, in the words of Louis de Cordier, because he waited like 2 or 3 years and then he put this out there, he said that he was told to cease in all discussion or release of information from the Matterhorn project, and him and team members were threatened with national security sanctions from Egypt, which means that, I think at the low, like if you come to Egypt, arrest you, and if not, when maybe we'll come and get you. I don't know. It's national security sanctions.
Is there a way to sort of massage that situation and to talk to Zahi and say, listen, you can be the guy who found this?
That would have been, I think that was a gift if it had been released. I actually think in the case, so it's funny, I kind of don't really blame him. So I think this was a political decision, not a, people say, it's hiding the truth and whatever. Yeah, okay, that's happening. There's data, this amazing, amazing find that could change the world. In my opinion, honestly, the labyrinth is the biggest archaeological discovery of the millennium. When we get into what that structure is and how big it is and the way it's reported in antiquity, there's nothing bigger than, Herodotus says it surpasses the pyramids. It's like finding more Giza, like a Giza plateau somewhere, like under the ground. Like you can't. I just think it would be the biggest discovery of the millennium, which is part of the problem.